I've created some systems and techniques and some meditations where people can, in the worst situation, they can be completely broke. They can have lost everything and they think there's no hope. And they can start using some of these techniques. They can shift into a reality where everything's perfect. And I'm just continuously every day getting people that come to me that have found that this is the way that they could overcome whatever they're going through in their life. And I'm constantly trying to gather new material that confirms this and broadens and expands it, like 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗏 Goddard and Joseph Murphy and others. The bottom line is whatever reality that you want actually exists right now. There's a version of you that is absolutely successful in whatever sport that you want. Sign the biggest contract that you want. Sign the biggest sponsorships that you want. Already exists. And so you can actually tune into this timeline where this exists. And for some, the process of shifting from one timeline to another is frustrating. It's a test. It's a spiritual test. But if you follow these basic principles and you're patient and you have faith and you continue to use your imagination properly, you can enter into any timeline that you want. The only thing that's going to stop you is your belief in the possibilities of it. Usually the primary thing that stops people from entering into those realities is they simply do not believe that it's possible. And so there's extremes to this, right? My friend that comes to me and says, I always wanted to be an NFL quarterback. That is a high vibration, completely different level of reality that you do exist in. But it would be like if you wanted to jump onto a moving train that's a bullet train going hundreds of miles per hour. If you jump on, you're going to get smacked. But if you can catch speed, if you can be going the same speed as that train, you can get on it pretty easy. So sometimes with the shifts that we're talking about can be complicated. They can require you taking bold actions. They can require literally changing the way you remember your past. A lot of times people will be blocked from certain futures because they're living in the past. And so, imagine that you're in a video game and you just woke up today in your body. This is the first time. You've never actually been in this body. You think you've been living in it all this time, but you've never really been in this body, just now. And it's a game to determine what you want to do. And usually the limits to the simulation or the game is your past, but you can even change that. 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗏 Goddard teaches we can revise our past. So for manifestation, there's differences in how it works. You can attract stuff to you. And for what we're talking about in the multiversal parallel realities, it's more than just attracting something to you. It's shifting into a reality that already exists. Understanding the physics of timelines and parallel realities in the multiverse gives me an advantage in this process of understanding that imagination does create reality. Imagination is just a conduit that's guiding me within this diverse multiverse of different realities. And the more I experiment and teach and share these techniques, the more I learn from other people, the more I get better and better at it. And the more the sort of veil between these realities is dissolving, because we're in an age where our access to this multiversal reality is increasing more than it has before. And so kind of the podcast is sort of kind of like, I'm 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏 Cronkite just reporting on how the world is changing and what I'm learning, right? And I'm just reporting on it because what we're doing now is different than might have been done 5-10 years ago. And in particular with sports, it's the perfect thing. The very best coaches are the ones that shift their teams into realities where they can see that they can win, that they can see that they're successful, that they believe in themselves. Their very best players have this unique innate ability to believe in their own abilities and accept. A lot of times, some of my favorite athletes, they just can't cross that one barrier because they simply don't have a belief they can go to that next level. And it has nothing to do with their skill or talent. It's all about the energy and the way they're shifting into that reality. And it's not super, I may sound like it's super easy as I continue to do it. There's all kinds of variables. It's much more complicated than we think. It can be simple. But the wonderful thing about sports in particular is that you're competing against other people that are shifting realities. And so it's always a test of their imagination. When I see two football teams, two soccer teams, whatever, I see two teams that are battling their own imaginations. And that's one, who imagined that they could win more? Who believed they could win more? It comes through in every single heartbeat, in the way they move their toes and fingers and everything. They shift their body, the commitment. So sports is sort of a way of evaluating our own ability to imagine in some ways, if you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Could you touch on this will be the last thing within that reality space, but could you touch on the actual practical steps that someone could take in order to do this? Because I'm a guy or a girl, that wants to change their life, and regardless of its sports, because that was one of my blind spots too, is my dad had kind of showed me this visualization technique, and I'd used it to score goals as a kid, to just create this whole thing. And I never extended it out into my life. I never thought that I could use that. It was just, no one told me I couldn't. I was so focused on sports that's where I was like, visual goal. I loved it. And the emotions, which is a big part of also trying to create this world that you're trying to feel it and stuff like that. So maybe just to give everybody just something they could do immediately. What are the practical steps for trying to change the world the way you want it?
Yeah, just as a side note, Phil Jackson was such an exemplar coach, and he was always having his teams meditate. And so if if you have an interest in shifting your reality, you have to come to terms with your thoughts and your mind and your imagination. So, I suggest the first step that you do is you spend 5 minutes and you get into a place where you can enter into silence and watch your thoughts. Sounds cliche, it sounds simple, but you're never going to have control over your mind or be able to visualize properly, because we can sit and visualize for a couple of minutes, but then we can go through the day daydreaming about how horrible we are. And so we're always battling every thought that we have. So the first step is getting control and becoming aware of our thoughts. That's the first step. And it's a simple step. Get into a place where you can sit in silence and observe your thoughts. As your thoughts come up, you treat them sort of like, you ever hear the radio next door where somebody's playing loud music and you eventually kind of ignore it? So that's what your thoughts are. You don't attach yourself to those thoughts. They are streams. You're always just communicating. So a lot of times we self-identify with our thoughts. We say we have this horrible thing come up, and we say that's me, but it's just a thought stream that comes through. So we get to a place, eventually you can get longer and longer. And then as you go through your day, you start to become aware of negative thoughts that come up. And it's amazing as you went down this rabbit hole, how often we have negative thoughts that we're not aware of, or how the can'ts, won't, do's. When you really put yourself in a position where every thought is now critical, and if I have a bad thought, everybody's going to have a bad thought. It's just the way the human mind works, because we're just attractors of thought streams all the time. Now, when you do, you need to acknowledge it. You need to say, I refuse to admit this to the law. This thought is not a part of the law. Remove it from the law, and then imagine something different. So, if you're in soccer, as I call it in America, soccer, right? If you imagine yourself kicking the soccer ball into the goal, right? And you see somebody blocking it later through the day, but you sit and visualize and you see yourself doing it. But then, so you need to immediately acknowledge that thought, understanding that thoughts are power. And then the feeling, the second step is you start to integrate your feelings. So you become aware of the thoughts and the feelings that become the magnifier to the thoughts. So then you slowly start to become aware what feelings you have. When you have these negative thoughts, what feelings you have. And so the next step is, once you've kind of gotten to a place where you're aware of your thoughts, you start to create thoughts, imagine thoughts, create your own movies of things that you want. And then you start adding layers of feelings. Feelings are the secret, as Neville Goddard teaches us. So everybody has weird thoughts that come up, but if you remember back in your life, the big things that happen, they always are tied to emotional events, things that come up in your body, feelings. So for some people, this is hard, but if you can sit and imagine the things that you want after you've just given yourself some time in silence. A lot of times people try to imagine and they haven't really dealt with their mind a little bit. So it's good to relax and center themselves and get to that blank space. There's a sort of void. It's just like clearing the chalkboard so that you can erase all the stuff so that you can then draw something you want. So you get into that space after you've gone through the void and cleared your mind, and then you start to bring up things to imagine. Now, some people, they struggle with imagining. So at first, the best thing is go back and look at moments in your past to bring up feelings. Think of something what's the best experience of your life when you were the most excited, you were most proud of yourself, and then start to daydream of things that would happen that would cause similar feelings. Bring those feelings up, magnify them, try to magnify them, and then see yourself doing the thing that you want to do. Now, it's natural for you to see yourself doing it from third person, which is normal, and that loses. If you imagine, for instance, you want to have large sums of money, and then your manifestation is brought to you when you watch Breaking Bad and you see a big pile of money on TV. That's because you didn't feel it. You had this flash where you wanted to see large sums of money in your life. You didn't put the feeling of, imagine laying down on that large sum of money, the feeling of the cash, and then suddenly something will happen different. So we always are very visual creatures, but each of our senses are also visualizing. Some people can do it through sounds, and they imagine somebody saying something. Great job, you did fantastic there. Some people do it through visceral feelings in their body. Some people can even do it through smells. And you get to a point where you can access all of your feelings and emotions. And if you can for most people, because their minds are so wild and crazy, it might take no less than 5 or 10 seconds. But if you can get to 17 to 20 seconds of vivid imagining, feeling it, creating it in your mind, and doing this on a regular basis, what's happening is imagine yourself on a boat where you're just rowing along the boat, and this reality that you want's over there, and you can just shift the stream that you're into, and then you move into this reality, and slowly these things will start to come up. As 𝗪𝗚𝗪𝗛 calls it, a bridge of incidents will then start to occur from the moment that you're at that seems so natural that you'll even reach a point where, did I imagine this? The beauty of the system is it's set up so that you always have some little question, or even you forget that you imagined it. It's not so obvious. If it was obvious, then it doesn't seem to be as powerful spiritually. So you're always going to question it. You're always going to go through a period of time where you don't believe in it, which is very common. People are going to do it and this doesn't work. I've been doing this forever. It doesn't work, or I'm not doing it properly. But if you continue to do it, having complete faith, as Jesus tells us to do, if you believe it, that's all you got to do. You got to believe that it's already happened. And so you follow this stream and you continue to imagine, you will find yourself in that reality if you have the faith and you commit yourself to it. But the second ingredient, the technique it's really important, is that you take some sort of bold action. That bold action confirms your faith. A lot of people think they can sit on their couch and do it, and there's some really good masters that can. But in most cases, you establish your faith and you start to push the energy towards what you want by taking some bold action. The action might be irrelevant, but you yourself, I'm going to go and take a bold action. I'm going to try out for this team. I'm going to send this letter. I'm going to do something. And when you do, it's just saying, I believe. And then you push yourself towards that timeline.